Hello, everybody. Welcome back. So, today we are looking at what lurks outside the door / fog. Now, this is a little horror series. Probably won't be that long in general, but yeah. I'm just gonna wait a couple minutes here, like we usually do, so folks can shuffle on in. Oops. Just a second. Oop, oop, oop. Okay. Hello, everybody. What is shaking? Oh, fun. Yikes. Okay. No, not much, not much. So, I don't really know too much about this one, but supposedly it's pretty spooky. I guess we'll find out, right? Hmm. Yeah! It is so awkwardly quiet. It is disturbingly quiet. It feels really awkwardly quiet. Oh boy. Oh, oh boy, have fun. Have fun with that. That doesn't sound fun. All right. We'll start in like I don't know, 2 minutes. I guess I can read this here while we wait. What lurks outside the door? Tap, tap, tap. The sound again and again, tapping on the door. The young mare could only try to ignore the tapping and the scratching at her door. Fun. Alright. I think it's a good time to start it now. Oops, that's just the thing. The letter you see reveal your ADHD type. What letter do you all see? I see a K, so I guess y'all can experiment with that. Alright, so let's see here. Let me just throw up some audio. I got some blank white noise that I think we can listen to. Maybe that'll be fitting for this. Ooh, yeah. Spooky. Something outside a pony's door. It won't let her sleep, but she doesn't want to open the door. Tap, tap, tap. It all had started with those three little noises. Sunny Glade, a young mare out on her own now, had not taken the noises as much more than some tapping in the night on her front door. It was probably just some critter that was trying to get in, so she had left some bowls of food and water out for whatever the little creature was. It didn't work. Every night, she would once again hear the tapping. She was a light sleeper, and her ears deathly sharp on picking up sound. a skill she had gained in her career as a musician. She could literally hear a pin drop. The next night, she decided to confront whatever it was, and as soon as she heard the tapping, she grabbed up her flashlight and stormed down and threw the door open. No pony was out there, and no matter how hard she looked, she didn't see any traces of any pony in the vicinity. Even the bowls she had left out were untouched. The only thing she could see was a slight indent in the wood of her door, where something pointed and had been poking at it. Sunny Glade huffed and suspected that the culprit was some late-night prankster, or drunk with a mean sense of humor. She had decided to make a call to the guards in the morning. But as she had closed the door, the tapping started again. Sunny Glade threw open the door and again was met with nothing. For a few moments, Sunny felt scared. She quickly went back inside and locked the door, and used the chain lock as well. She was sure that whoever was bothering her was a harmless prankster, but she still felt a little safer with the extra lock on. She was a single mare out on her own in an unfamiliar town she had just moved into. It would not be uncommon that she might attract the attention of a stallion with ill intentions on her person. She made a firm mental note to call the guards in the morning about this. She went back to sleep soon after, but slept lightly and with her can of pepper spray on her nightstand. The next day, she had called the guard before going to work. Her band had practiced for a concert in a few days, and Sunny had to be ready for it. She couldn't let the events of last night ruin her mood or her skill. When she had returned home that afternoon, she smiled at the sight of 2 guards doing an extra patrol in her area of town. She gave the 2 guards a wave, and they to her. Sunny went into her house feeling confident that the tapping would stop. After dinner and a warm romance novel with a particularly heated argument between the 2 protagonists that left Sunny blushing, she had slipped into blissful sleep, content that tonight she would finally have peace and quiet. Tap, tap, tap. Sunny gasped, her eyes shooting open, and she bolted up in her bed. It was that sound again. Sunny got out of bed and listened, hoping to hear a scuffle, or the guards putting the cuffs on whatever sick bastard was tormenting her. Tap, tap, tap. That was all she heard. Again and again, in a sequence of rhythm. Sunny sucked in a breath and slowly made her way downstairs. The tapping noise kept up and seemed to get louder with each step she took. As she drew close to the door, the tapping stopped. Sunny held her breath and waited. And waited. She must have waited for several minutes before smiling and figuring that the culprit was finally gone. Scratch, scratch, scratch. The sound of nails or claws racking against her door made Sunny jump and look at her door. She rushed and threw open the door and once more saw nothing outside. Her eyes slowly looked to her door now, and she felt her heart grow still and chill run up her spine. 3 long scratch marks drew down her door, just under the tapping mark. But worse, as Sunny shined her light on the marks, saw the faint red glow of blood mixed into the wood on her door. She looked outside and saw no sign of the guards. Sunny didn't want to jump to any conclusions. Maybe they were chasing whoever was behind this sick joke. Scratch, scratch, scratch. Sunny froze hearing the scratching noise, this time from the trees not far from her home, leading into the local wildlife park. It was hard to see in the dark, and her flashlight's beam did not extend far, but she could hear the scratching. Then the tapping. Tap, tap, tap. Sunny quickly slammed the door and locked it. She sucked in a breath and covered her ears. Why? Why? Who would be doing this to her? She had never done anything wrong to any pony. What reason did they have to do this to her? Was it a sick game? And where were the guards? Was it some sort of animal? Sunny's thoughts bothered her so much that she nearly leaped out of her skin when she heard the tapping noise once more. At her door, Sunny looked at the door before quickly running upstairs to her room and slamming and locking the door. She threw herself under her covers and threw her pillow over her ears. She hoped, prayed that it would muffle the noise. Tap, scratch, tap, scratch. Sunny didn't get any sleep that night. The following day, tired and exhausted, Sunny went down to the guardhouse, hoping to demand an explanation. When she arrived, she saw that all the guards were busy, and when she came up to the desk, the pony there took her down to the captain's office. She asked why she was brought down there, and wished she hadn't. The 2 guards that had been sent to patrol her neighborhood had been found just outside of town at the edge of the woods. Their bodies were hanging from the trees, mutilated as if something had torn them apart. The autopsy was still in the works, but whatever had killed them must have done it swiftly and instantly. The captain asked her if she knew of anything that could help the investigation, though Sunny felt he wondered if she was behind it. She told the captain everything about the past few nights. The captain hummed, rubbing his cheek. "Thank you, that will be all," he had said before letting Sunny leave. Sunny left the guardhouse, feeling disturbed and sick. More so, she felt worried. What had killed the guards? Was it whatever was tapping at her door? Sunny felt a chill later that evening, and she practically ran home after practice and locked all of her doors and windows. She held tightly to a bat she had in the closet, wishing she had the bits for the spell gun. Then she waited. An hour passed before finally she heard it. Tap, tap, scratch. Sunny sucked a breath, but slowly tiptoed down the stairs to her door. Her brain was telling her to run and hide, but Sunny was sick of running and hiding. She was tired, exhausted, terrified even. If this was some sort of animal, she wanted it gone. She wanted her life back. She wanted peace and quiet. Yet, if whatever was out there was dangerous, she did not want to go rushing out. So, slowly and with held breath, Sunny stood up on her hind legs and peeked through the door's spyglass hole and tried to see if she could catch a glimpse of whatever was out there. What she saw sent a chill up her spine and nearly had her recoil in fright. There, outside her door, stood a tall, lanky figure. It was shrouded in the night, but Sunny was sure she could make out pale, almost stretched like skin on thin, almost bone-like body. The creature, whatever it was, sat crouched on its long, spindly limbs that folded backwards. Its front legs acted more like a minotaur's arms, and were folded up to allow its long, thin, pointed claws to tap at the wood on her door. Its head was round and oval-shaped with no signs of ears, and with no hair at all. In fact, the entire creature's body was hairless. I think it might be the rake, y'all might be right. It had no sign of it was male or female. It just sat there, tapping at her door. Sunny watched with a sense of terror building at this creature. She held her breath, afraid that any movement or breathing would alert it to her presence. Tap, tap, scratch. The creature went on with its pattern before its head slowly moved to stare up at her door. Sunny fought back a scream as she looked at the oval-shaped head with nothing more than 2 big red eyes, with no distinct iris, no scent, no nose, not even a mouth that she could see. The way the creature stared at the door, it was almost as if it was staring at her through the spyglass. Sunny could only stare back. Slowly, the creature then lifted its claw from the door and began tapping on the outside portion of the door's spyglass hole. Sunny screamed, falling back with a thud, and she moved away from the door. Tap, 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 tap. It knew. It knew she was in here. It knew she had been looking at it. Sunny began to hyperventilate, rushing into her living room. She grabbed her couch, and with strength she didn't know she had, pushed it against the door to act as a barrier, and rushed up back to her room. She did the same with her bed, pushing it against the door. She didn't sleep that night either, only sat in a corner of her room, watching the window and the door, listening to the tapping at her door. Sunny began to cry, begging for it all to stop, praying to whatever higher power there was to deliver her from this nightmare. The tapping eventually stopped, but Sunny still did not move. She just listened and watched. As she looked to her bedroom door, the sound of glass being tapped against brought her attention to her window. Sunny screamed again as she saw the silhouetted form of a long, spindly claw-like appendage and an oval-shaped head crawling up her house wall and tapping at her window. The creature stared at her, silent and constantly tapping. Sunny screamed again as she saw the silhouetted form of a long, spindly claw-like appendage and an oval-shaped head crawling up her house wall and tapping her window. The creature stared at her, silent and constantly tapping. I think I might have read that one already. Sunny screamed and threw herself into the closet. She stayed awake all night, clutching her bat tightly. When the sun finally rose that morning, the creature was gone, but it had left deeper marks into her door and scratches on her window. Sunny cried that day, and she didn't go to practice. She had to leave. She had to get out, to get away from this town, get away from this creature. But she couldn't. She had spent so much money on this home. Her savings were low, and she didn't have the bits to buy a new house, much less an apartment in the city. And even if she could sell her house, who would buy it? What did she say about the door? And the dead guards was already causing some houses that had once been pending for ponies to move into go back on the market again, once word of the murder had spread into the news. She was trapped in here, in this house, this town, and Sunny felt that creature knew it. For days after, Sunny didn't sleep a wink. Her music practice faltered, and she was cut from the band. Every night, the creature would return to tap at a door or scratch at it. It never went to the window again, just her door. Still, she had nailed the window, covered with boards, just to be sure. Sunny tried to ignore the sounds, but always she could hear it in her head. Tap, tap, tap. Like a constant companion it was, haunting her mind and driving her crazy. Sunny felt that she was going to lose her mind when one day she heard something. When she had peeked outside her bedroom door to stare down the stairs to her front door. Click. In the dark, she barely made out the slender dark shape of a claw-like appendage, thin and spindly, worming its way through her door. It must have made a hole in her door with its constant poking, and now its finger could slide into her home. Sunny watched with horror as the claw moved like a snake, its multi-jointed points moving to flick at the lock on her door and push away the chain. The door slowly sliding open, and the creature crawling in on all fours. Sunny slammed her bedroom door shut, locked it, and threw her bed once more against the door, then her nightstand, and covered herself in her blankets in a corner and hid under them. Tap, tap, tap. The sound began again, this time on her bedroom door. It's been about a week now. Sunny is tired, exhausted. Her health is terrible, and she can barely focus now. She hasn't left her house in days, fearful to even leave her room, even during the day. Every night, the tapping noise would come back, with scratching in between each tap. Tap, scratch, tap, scratch. Sunny sucked in a breath at the pause of the noise, and fear gripped her heart as she heard it. Click. It unlocked her door. The door opens, bumping against her bed. Bam, bam, bam. The creature slams the door against the bed, each time moving it until there is a tiny gap in the door. Sunny watches in horror as the thin creature slowly crawls through the gap, its oval-shaped head squeezing through the gap, and it crawls around the bed. Sunny turns and hides herself under the covers, looking away. She can hear it move. It's right next to her. She can feel its breath. She can feel its spindly claws drag themselves across the covers on her body, making slight ripping sounds against the fabric. Then a noise sounds against her wall, just above her head. Tap, 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 tap. Sunny began to cry, not sure what to do. This creature standing just inches from her, tormenting her with that infernal noise. It never once stopped, even as she cried. Sunny couldn't take it anymore. That noise, that horrible noise. Bam, bam, bam. Sunny began to hit her head against her wall, trying to drown out the tapping noise. She kept going all through the night, her head and the creature's claw moving in sync with each other. Tap, bam, tap, bam, tap, bam. Sunny stared at the white walls of her new room. The light was bright, but her room was comfy and soft. She tried to move, but found her limbs restrained in her new coat. She couldn't quite remember how she got here. It was all so very fuzzy. The guards had shown up on her house, apparently alerted by something. They had taken Sunny away from her home and brought her down to the hospital. Doctors. Yes, there had been doctors. Apparently, she couldn't go home. She was sick, they said. They were very nice, though. They gave her a new jacket to wear all the time, and even gave her this lovely room. She was even part of a new community. The ponies were nice to her, and very cheerful. Some always burst into laughter for no reason at all. Yes, it was a fine community. And the room. Sunny loved her new room. It was so peaceful, so quiet, and the walls so very soft, almost like snow. Sunny liked the walls. They didn't hurt her head as much. Slowly, Sunny tilted side to side in her new room, humming to herself a little tune, enjoying the soft press of her walls against her head every few seconds. She thought also she could hear something at her door. Tap, 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 tap. This is what happens when I listen to too much creepypasta and feel the urge to write my attempts at some horror, I suppose. What do you think? This was an entirely new ground for me. That was a good story. I liked that story a lot, actually. Now there's a sequel to this story. So we are going to be reading that one next. I thought that was pretty good. I gotta admit. I thought that one was solid. Dude, I don't think the guards dying was all in her head. I'm just saying. I don't think the guards dying was just hypothetical. She did absolutely go crazy. Honestly, so like to me, the creature seemed very like, I suppose, rake-like, but without the features of a face, I guess. Buys a hunting rifle. She wanted to buy some sort of magic blaster. No, whatever happened. Obviously that crud made her mentally unwell. And yeah, what did it say how long she went? Like a couple days to a week? Yeah, I believe this one is a sequel. I could be completely wrong. I think this is a sequel. Okay. Don't spam. Don't spam. That's super annoying. This may or may not be related to the last one, but who knows. But, that's good enough. That's good. We can work with that. So, a pony is locked in his room, a thick fog outside his window. Something outside wants in. Definitely a sequel. The fog outside. Silver Shoes, a middle-aged stallion, and local silversmith sat huddled against the door leading into his cabin. Though he had locked the door, he still could not feel safe until he had the comforting knowledge of some weight pressed up against the door. Somehow, expecting that it would do more to keep out that which lurked just beyond the wooden barrier. Silver pressed his hooves harder against his ears. Even as he curled up tighter into himself, the constant sound of light scratching against the wood on the other side, a constant reminder that something was out there. But worse, the scratching seemed a constant thing, as if whatever was out there knew that he was in here, and it seemed intent on torturing him. The scratching would continue in its same monotone of a slow sliding of something sharp against the wood, then a pause moment before starting again. Sometimes the pauses would last for almost a minute before continuing. This only grew worse with the added motion of something jiggling the doorknob and pushing and pulling lightly on the door, then another scratch, then a jiggle, and finally a shake of the door. Those three simple sounds, over and over again in a pattern that seemed bent on driving Silver mad with fear. He sobbed, wrapping his hooves around his head as he attempts to muffle the noise, seemed fruitless. How had this all come to be? He sobbed, hearing the scratches again. His mind began to replay the events before him, as if in its flickering of mental pictures would help him recall where things had gone wrong. Perhaps in them he might find salvation, or at least an explanation. Out of all the images that came to mind, his work as a silversmith, his family, his friends, his town, out of all of this, one image came to mind, an idol, that damn, terrible idol. It was small, about the size of a mini watermelon. It was not at all well made. A basic square base with 4 curved spikes at the top and a curving till the points aimed at the flat base of the idol. The base was decorated with old runes and images of figures. When they had found it, every pony had assumed it was some sort of old relic. The news of it spread, attracting archaeologists from across Equestria. The mine and its surrounding line soon became a dig for further artifacts. For a week, the dig turned up little, save old pottery and some stone figures. One digger said they might have found a tunnel leading into what was assumed to be a complex of some sort. Of course, no pony was able to find out, as on the last day of that week, things began to change. Slowly, little by little, a fog started to appear in the town. Nothing the weather ponies did seemed to make it go away. Ponies were concerned, but figured that it was just some wild fog that blew in from the Everfree. The town was right on its border, after all. Ponies assumed that, in time, the fog would pass away. The fog slowly began to grow, hour by hour, until it engulfed the entire town in a thick, white, hazy screen. Ponies couldn't see barely a hoof in front of them. That's when the screaming began. Silver had been outside with his wife when they heard the first of the screams. It sounded like a pony was being brutally murdered in the thick fog. Pony shouted, running and fleeing in the fog despite the difficulty of sight. All the while the screaming kept up, and the sounds of ripping flesh and blood splattering on the ground and walls of the houses. Silver and his wife did not bother to wonder what was happening. Their instincts for survival kicked in, and they ran as fast as their hooves could carry them to their cabin on the outskirts of town. The fog seemed to be constant companion with them. They were just a few feet from their home when Silver's wife tripped and fell. Silver turned, ready to go back and run to help his wife, but any such thoughts faded when he heard her screaming, the sounds of ripping flesh evident in the air. Fear took hold, accompanied by sadness. Silver cried even as he ran, part of his mind telling him to go back and help his wife, but a more primal part telling him to run. He kept running, bursting through the door of his cabin and slamming the door shut and locking it. And so here he was, locked in his home, curled up in a ball, weeping, crying. Outside, the sound of scratching continuing. What had caused it? It had to be the idol. It was the only explanation. Or that's how it seemed to Silver. Somehow, it had brought the fog, and with the fog had come what? Silver sucked in a breath and peered over to the window near the door. The outside was white and hazy with the fog. He couldn't see anything, and yet he had to know. He didn't want to know, but he had to know what was out there. He knew something was out there, and his curiosity compelled him to look. Slowly, surely, he crawled over to the window, the scratching at the door never stopping. Slowly, he peeked out the window. He didn't see anything. Bam! Silver leaped back as a thin, stick-like appendage of a claw connected to a long, just as thin limb planted itself on the window. It was covered in pink, blood-covered skin that seemed stretched over the bones. The claw bent, and a head appeared in sight of the window. Silver began to hyperventilate as he stared into a bloody, pink-skinned face. It had long, paper-thin, slit-like eyes and no nose. Its mouth was thin and had sharp teeth slipping out between where lips should be. Its ears were long and curved, almost bitten and chewed. The head had no neck, just connected to an oval-shaped body. The creature stared at him. Then it tapped on the glass, before its claw reached out beyond the window's view, to where the door would be. All the while the creature kept its eyes on Silver. Silver covered his face, trying to hide himself from the creature as he heard it scratch at the door. He pushed himself back against his nightstand with his legs, knocking it down and the contents of the drawer falling out. Silver looked to the spilled items, to the creature in the window, and to the door. Celestia, it knew it was in here. It wanted to get in. With horror, Silver saw what looked like holes beginning to appear in the inside portion of the door, the tips of long, thin claws peeking and poking through as it dragged wood apart. The fog slowly beginning to seep through. Silver began to breathe heavily, his heart racing. The thin, claw-like fingers flicked at the lock, trying to undo it with what little movement the creature had. Silver looked around for any means of escape. There was none, of course, until he saw it. It was his gun, an old Griffin model he had purchased as a means of self-defense. It took a long time to reload, and the ball bullet was not the most accurate, but it was top of the line in the Griffin kingdoms. Silver didn't know if it would work on whatever was trying to get in. He had one shot. That was it. That was the way out. Silver began to cry and laugh at the same time. He was dead. He was going to die, just like his wife had died, just like every pony in town had died. He might as well die quickly, then, however, which way this creature outside would end him. Slowly, Silver took the gun in his hooves. A smile crept along his face as tears rolled down his eyes. He placed the gun to his head and pulled the trigger. His body slumped and the gun fell to the ground with a clatter. He lay there, his blood pooling on the floor. Eventually, the white, hazy fog seeped fully into a cabin. The two long, thin claw-like hands gripped Silver's limp body and dragged it into the fog. Well, you know what? When in doubt, you know what? I'm not gonna say anything to that. Well, I mean, when you have no choice in a scenario like that, I mean, what do you do? What do you do? So, let's see here. We've only been here for 36 minutes. I would like to include another. I have to. This is way too short, so... I was expecting this was going to at least take probably an hour. But no, 36 minutes. I suppose I can stop that audio. It feels weird not hearing it anymore. Ah. Goodness gracious. Alright, do you folks have any short story suggestions? Roughly 2,000 words. Or, well, actually 5,000. 5,000 is my limit. Hmm. Gosh. Oh, maybe that one. Wait, hold on. Ooh. Okay, I think I found one. I think I found one. I think I found one that might be interesting. Just give me a second. This one looks like it might actually be pretty good. That's not it. That's the wrong one. We'll do that one later. Here we go. Oh, Well, videos come from somewhere. Ooh. Ooh, yeah. I just saw this one. I just stumbled upon this one. I was like, Opalescence? Question mark. Opalescence goes missing. She returns different. I think for the sake of the channel, this one's probably going to be interesting. Because we like to cover these types of things. So, a feline metamorphosis. Opalescence, a feline metamorphosis. Cascades of pearly moonlight illuminated the center of Rarity's thoroughly ruined bedroom. All manners of cloth, clothing, and bed linens laid strewn haphazardly across her room. What was once a neat dresser had been turned into an amalgamation of velvet and silk knitting material. A once tidy closet, too, had been over embellished with wreaths of cotton and wool. Dresses and skirts sprawled over particularly every meter of what was once a mirage of blue and gray carpeting. Rarity's collection of ponykins, too, had been chaotically dispersed across the room. Some remained standing, whilst others laid in ruin, victims of their owner's wrath and misery. The centerpiece of the pandemonium, however, remained Rarity herself. She sat, head sunk low into her forehoofs on her comparatively intact bed, tears both dried and fresh, stained her usually pristine makeup. She'd searched desperately for hours on end in every crack, every corner, under the dressers, under the tables, in the closets, Rarity thought, digging her muzzle ever deeper into her forehoofs, every crack, every corner, nothing, absolutely nothing. Nothing at all. A strange sigh escaped her cracked lips. "Where have you gone, Opal?" Rarity asked hopelessly, drawing her eyes to the window which Rarity had left open in hopes that her feline companion might return. With several days already past, unthinkable doubts threatened to creep into her head. "Unthinkable," Rarity whispered with a shake of her head. "Absolutely unthinkable." She raised a now chipped hoof to her chaotic and unkempt coil of a mane. Sweetie Belle had been sent away after the mania had begun. "It's better that way. Was that a day ago, too? I can't remember," Rarity thought, stabbing at the fringes of her scrambled memory. Evading sleep apparently did indeed have its consequences. Slumber, however, remained and would continue to remain naught but a fantasy. There would be no rest for Rarity till Opal returned alive. Or, inconceivable! Unthinkable! She screeched as the impossible thought lingered once more, too close to the surface of her conscience. Rarity cringed at her outburst and comforted her now throbbing temples. The deathly, near incapacitating headache didn't help the situation either. Some time ago, during her hurricane of turmoil, Rarity's friends had approached her, offering their support around the house. They seemed worried. She'd rejected them. Obviously, Rarity thought, they couldn't possibly hope to help her here, not while Opal remained lost. They needed to search, and she needed to stay and wait. Wait till her kitty returned home, which she would, eventually. What did Fluttershy tell her about cats traveling dozens of kilometers to return home? She always does, Rarity thought aloud. A shadow crossed the moonlit ray that beamed through her window. Rarity's heart skipped a beat, and faster than could ever be expected for a pony of her physique and condition. She leaped from her bed and towards the edge of her window. Gripping the wooden frame, she haphazardly lifted half her body out of the window and into a cold nighttime air. Not nightmare air, nighttime air. Her eyes darted around in their sockets, scanning the environment like some bird of prey. She found nothing. "Opal!" Rarity screamed, with such pitch and volume that half of Ponyville likely awoke from their slumber. I'm not screaming. A whimper escaped. Something above her. With an almost animalistic degree of velocity, Rarity trained her vision above her, heart full of hope. A set of terrified, turquoise eyes stared back, accompanied by a shuddering and shivering pale gold Pegasus. Fluttershy? Rarity asked in disbelief as her heart shattered. I'm sorry. I know you told us to go, but I was worried about you, Rarity. Fluttershy whimpered, peeling away from the window. Rarity gritted her teeth and tensed her exhausted muscles as unbridled rage and frustration pulsed through her veins. Fluttershy, terrified of her friend's change in demeanor, made to hide behind her pale rose mane and prepared for the worst. Rarity opened her mouth to release the most virulent spew of debauchery she possibly could at her shy Pegasus friend, but nothing came. She sighed. Fluttershy, go home, Rarity managed before dropping back into her room in defeat. Distantly, she just about heard the light fluttering of her friend's wings as Fluttershy undoubtedly fled the scene. Perhaps Opal really is gone, Rarity thought. Tears fought their way to the corners of her eyes. She cast a now blurry gaze across the ruined form of her bedroom. She'd shunned her friends and even cast out her own sister. I'm a mess, Rarity concluded, allowing reality to sink in for the first time since the whole ordeal had started. Opal had been with Rarity since the very beginning. As not but a filly, they'd grown up side by side. Through every struggle, every hurdle, Opal had been there, even if her love wasn't exactly palpable sometimes. What had begun as an exhausted cry soon transformed into an open bawling. Rarity just about managed to crawl into her bed, curling into a fetal position as she wept. Eventually, her sobbing ceased, and shortly thereafter, Luna's inevitable slumber claimed her. She didn't cast her out in like the sense you think of just throwing her out and telling her to go away. Pretty sure she was sent back to live with somebody else or whoever or whatnot. They said something. They said something. Sweetabelle had been sent away. I'm guessing she was sent somewhere safer since her little incident. Rarity awoke to the slight but unmistakable sound of movement by her window frame. Oh god, here we go again with the windows! Sleep still clouded her eyes, but even in the blur, she could make out a figure casting a shadow in the pale moonlight. Fluttershy, I'm sorry about how I treated you earlier. It was rather unkind of me, Rarity slurred, swiping at the sleep in her eyes and struggling to sit up. The figure stopped abruptly and remained still. I know the room is a mess. Opal going missing has been hard on me, to say the least, Rarity admitted. Finally, in a seated position, she looked up with the most heartfelt smile she could rally. As she looked upon the figure, Rarity's smile faltered before ultimately fading entirely as she processed the fact that whatever sat in her window frame, it most certainly wasn't Fluttershy. Even though half of the figure remained drenched in the darkness of her room, what Rarity could make out for certain that it indeed wasn't a Pegasus, nor a pony. Well, she maybe also could have been like sent to like stay at the treehouse or something. Rarity's heart sunk to the floor as both her and the figure remained locked in an almost trance-like staring contest. As her eyes adjusted to the darkness, further features on the thing that sat in her window frame became ever more clear, most notably, distinctively, feline ears. Rarity's brow furrowed in equal parts horror and confusion. Opalescence? She whispered with all the courage she could muster. The thing's head cocked before taking a slow but decisively deliberate step into Rarity's bedchamber. Every semblance of Rarity's being urged her to run and not look back, but her body refused. A sense of cold, numbing paralysis sunk into her limbs, and she couldn't help but watch as it approached her bedside. As the creature grew closer, so did its features grow clearer. Pinkish, hairless skin hung loosely from the abomination's frame, accompanied by a gaping, twisting maw. Bloodshot emerald eyes twitched and flickered as the creature took in Rarity's now quivering form. Thick, dark liquid painted the horror's wickedly pointed teeth. A wave of uneasy nausea ran through Rarity's bowels. Some semblance of strength returned to her weary body, allowing her to slowly crawl backwards as Opalescence's distorted frame clawed its way in onto her bed. An almost debilitating odor filled Rarity's nose as whatever power she had left took flight and abandoned her. The creature placed a disfigured paw onto Rarity's chest, effectively pinning her. Home, it gargled, spilling drops of equal parts blood and saliva onto its owner's features. Rarity looked into the maddened eyes of her once beloved pet. Food. A short-lived scream escaped Rarity's lips as Opalescence gorged itself on its master. Dang, dude. Opal! Opal! Opal, what wrong with you, Opal? That's not Opal. That's not Opal. That's a bat. But my goodness. That was interesting. Surely interesting. Oh, wow. That was 3 stories, I suppose. I know we're not at an hour. Womp womp. I'm kind of disappointed about that myself, but this just gives me more time to find more stories, I suppose. That could be interesting. I usually just work off of recommendations for the most part. But wow. Mutant Opalescence. Yeah, some crud's going on there with Opal. I feel like some pony kidnapped her, Opal, I should say, kidnapped Opal or something and then did some lab experiments. I don't know what happened. I feel like Opal might have gone into the green toxic waste or something. Cause last I checked, Opal didn't talk and wasn't a mutant monster. So that was interesting. But yeah. I think next time we'll do another big story. So thank you so much